So if you'll just bear with me while I introduce the space and the author. Let me just let you know who is speaking to you. I am Natasha Skanda. I'm a faculty member at New York University's Wagner School of Public Service. So since its inception in 2009, the NYUAD Institute in Abu Dhabi and New York has provided a platform for exchange about the newest developments in research and scholarship amongst the discipline. The Institute in New York, where you are now sitting, offers the Washington Square community opportunities to hear experts talk about their research and its societal relevance, technological and cultural impact, and its importance for the world at large, ranging from artistic and creative innovations to issues of equity and inclusion, public health, and environmental sustainability, amongst others. As a hub for vibrant scholarly public engagement, the Institute is unparalleled in the Gulf region, and we are so pleased to offer programming and extend the Institute's reach here at 19 Washington Square North, NYU Abu Dhabi's home in New York, and I hope that all of you will consider it your home as well, if this is your first time here or if this is your millionth time here. So Onoso, Imoagene. Onoso is an associate professor of social research and public policy at New York University's Abu Dhabi campus. She graduated with first honors in sociology from the University of Ibadan, Nigeria, a master's degree in modern society and global transformations from the University of Cambridge, and a doctorate in sociology from Harvard University. Her main research areas are international migration and race and ethnicity, with a special focus on first and second generation African immigrants in several national diasporas, including the British and American diasporas. Her first book, Beyond Expectations, Second Generation Nigerians in the United States and Britain, published by the University of California Press, is the first book-length comparative study on the adult African second generation in Britain and the United States. Her second book is another first, on the intended and unintended consequences of the U.S. diversity visa program on West African immigrants, and it was published by the Russell Sage Foundation in 2024. That is the book that we have the great honor and privilege to discuss today, and she is currently extending her scholarly pursuits to work on two new projects, a survey on second-generation Africans in the United States and the Africa-China Migration Project, a qualitative study of African women entrepreneurs in China and Chinese migrants in several African countries. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome you to this conversation with Onoso about her brilliant book. So I'm gonna take a seat and begin the conversation. Lovely to have you here, Onoso, to discuss this beautiful book. Again, another first. I think that there are very few books that look at the U.S. diversity program. The U.S. diversity program is a special component of the U.S. immigration system. It functions as a lottery that awards winners from underrepresented countries the chance to apply for legal permanent residence in the United States. The program is actually numerically very small. It's capped at 50,000 a year, but it is enormously consequential and very understudied. Your book is one of the few books out there that studies this program and its effects, certainly with relationship to the African continent. Can you tell us more about this very important program, its historical origins, and why you decided to study it?
All right. Thank you so much, Natasha, for this kind of introduction, and I'm so happy to see all of you. Thank you for coming to the book conversation. And so I think Natasha has started telling us a little bit about the DV program. I think some people have called it a global game of chance, because right now about 106 citizens of 160 countries are eligible to play the diversity visa program. And the way it runs, even though it's a lottery, every year, about 12 to 20 million people apply for the register for the program. If you add their derivatives, that is their spouses and the children under the age of 21, it comes to about 20 million. And the registration period runs from October to November every single year. And from those 12 to 20 million people, about 100,000 individuals, between 100,000 to 150,000 individuals are told, hey, congratulations, you'll be selected out of the lottery. And it was paper-based when it started in the 90s, but it's now online, and it's one application per person. And so they go check online. There's a dedicated website in May of the following year. And that's winning of the lottery, just as Natasha said, gives you the right to start applying for an immigrant visa. It doesn't guarantee you the immigrant visa. It just tells you can start the process. Now, the process is very lengthy. It takes a lot of money. They have to verify your educational requirements, because the program, one of the things that it has an educational requirement. The United States doesn't want undereducated people to apply through this program. And so it requires applicants to have at least a high school diploma or its equivalent. And so in other countries outside of the United States, we're talking about 5 O-level papers, right? So that means you must have a passing grade in math and English and 3 other subjects, whatever it might be. Or if you do not go through that educational route, it requires you to be an artisan, to have gone through, learned a skill that required at least 2 years of an apprenticeship program. So you're thinking in terms of in the olden days, in the earlier stages, years of the program, you're thinking in terms of maybe being a seamstress, so you have gone to tailoring school for 2 years, or you're a mechanic, or you're a painter, those kind of things. But right now, the United States has upskilled that provision to the point where if you look at what they're asking for, they most likely have gone to college, or at least have a high school diploma. So that pathway where a lot of undereducated or people who are so highly skilled, we're using it as a way to come in, has been blocked in that sense. And then officially it is free to apply for or to register for the program. If you're computer savvy, you have internet connection, you can, ostensibly go and register, put your picture. But for many people, they are not computer savvy, or they don't have internet access, or we'll talk about it a little bit. Some of the requirements of the program defeat them, and so they have to look for experts who would help them. So particularly the picture. The United States has this requirement on its picture. It says the picture has to be not larger than 240 kilobytes. It has to be 600 by 600 pixels. You have to position the head this way within a 2-inch square. It can't be larger than 2 inches. It can't be 1 inch by 1 inch. I mean, when even people like us who think we're computer savvy or we know how to navigate our way on the internet, you get defeated. I think for all of you, if you ever take a picture with your phones, you realize that the size of your picture is in megabytes. It's like 1.6 or 2. So the question then is, how do you resize from that to 240 or less than 240? And so that gives people the need to require experts or to outsource this aspect of the DV requirement to experts, and then creates this cottage industry of actors who have emerged to help people apply and also to make money out of the program. So that's sort of a little bit about what the program is about. And now to talk about the history of the program, that is really fascinating when you think about the history of the DV, because its origins are extremely ironic. It really started as a lobby by white Europeans to get visas to give to people in their immigrant community outside of the family preference system. And I would say, let me just backtrack a little. So in 1965, when the Hart-Celler Act was enacted or passed, what they expected or what the United States did was like, first of all, liberalized or reduced the quotas. It removed the quotas of countries, of citizens who will come from certain countries. But because they hinged the U.S. immigration policy, the new policy in 1965 of family reunification, that was the base, the foundation of the policy. They thought it would not change the ethnic and racial composition of U.S. immigration streams. Because, I mean, you have to have a family member, right? And they're like, well, we know the people we have in the United States. But what then happened was that because it abolished the quotas, a lot of people were coming into the U.S. That was one reason. But by the 1980s, they realized that predominantly the immigration streams were coming from Asia and Latin America. And they were surprised. And what happened? How did that come about? And it was because of a number of reasons. One was that there was a lot of economic hardship in Asia and Latin American countries. And so citizens from those countries said, hey, let's go to the US too. We'll be able to earn higher wages to help our families. Then you had the United States, who also was using refugee policy as foreign policy, and that was during the battle of the US, communism, capitalism, let's try and, let's wage a war, a proxy war through immigration. And so through presidential parole, US presidents settled, between 1975 to the mid-1980s, they settled 690,000 Cubans. They gave 690,000 Cubans visas, immigrant visas to resettle in the United States, and they gave 360,000 Asian citizens from Asian countries an opportunity to settle in the United States. They were doing this through refugee and asylum policies, and this was outside of the legal provisions in 1965. And then in 1986, Ronald Reagan passed the ECA law, which gave amnesty to individuals who were undocumented, who had arrived in the United States before 1981. And so as a result of that, you now had a lot of Latin Americans and Asians who, between those two things, the parole, presidential parole and ECA, could then become American citizens and could then apply for their family members to come. And so that's why the immigration stream and the economic makeup of the United States changed dramatically, and they began to predominate the immigration stream. And so you then had some Irish immigrants that had come into the United States in the 1980s. This was at a time when Ireland was going through some economic hardships. And so a lot of them came in with visas, and then they overstayed their visas, and they became undocumented. And so they now formed a group in 1987, the Irish Immigration Reform Movement, the IIRM, and they started lobbying the US government. And what they were telling the US government was, we need visas, we need legal visas, visas that will give permanent resident status to our citizens, our members of our community who are undocumented, who are outside the family reunification system, because they didn't have family to file for them. If you think about the Irish immigration stream, that was the way earlier wave of the 1800s and the 1900s. So they were locked out of family preference. And what they told the United States was, you know us very well. We're looking for, let's talk about cultural diversity of US immigration streams. We are the well-tested immigration assimilation model. We have assimilated. America is a country of immigrants. We have a long history, we Europeans and we Irish. And their pitch about let us have cultural diversity and let's diversify the immigrant streams, particularly to countries they said had been adversely affected by the 1965 law, which was basically, they created a list of countries that were adversely affected. There were 36 countries, and they were almost all in Europe. And so they made this speech, and it was very convincing. And so they got the late Senator Ted Kennedy on board. They got Chuck Schumer, who is the current U.S. Senate Majority Leader, on board. They got Adam Simpson. They got the old Speaker Tip O'Neill. They got some congressmen like Brian Donnelly of Massachusetts, who was in charge of the most Irish districts, Quincy, South Shore, Boston, on board, and they started creating this policy. It is absolutely fascinating. I hear, I had someone ask me the other day that, how, when you hear people say that coming to the United States the right way, I said, well, it really depends on how much political power you have to shape what is undocumented, to move the government to create a policy that basically is catering to a particular group of people. Because as they started to ramp up and advocate for this policy, a couple of things happened. There were some precursors of the DV. The US started creating certain programs just to test what would happen. And so the first one was the Donnelly program, they call it the TP5, which the United States basically made 5,000 visas available per year in 1987 and 1988. They said they were dedicating this to the immigrants adversely affected, who are coming from these adversely affected countries. They opened the application period open for 1 week. It was first come, first served. It was advertised widely in the Irish immigrant communities. 250,000 Irish immigrants applied for that program out of the 1 million that were received. And of the 10,000 that were given in those 2 years, 3,112 were won by Irish immigrants. Okay, this is a good deal. Then they created another program in 89 and 90, and they gave 15,000 visas per year. And then they now said there was no new application process. It was the ones that had been received for the 87-88 cycle, and more Irish immigrants won visas through that process. And during the TP5, you could apply multiple times. The leaders of the IRM, Sean Benson, Sean Minihan, Sean Benson, he applied 400 times. He put in 400 applications during that 1 week window. And he won his immigrant visa through the TP5 process. And then 1990 brought this law, and the United States, when you talk about the DV, we say it was, the legislation passed and established it in 1990, but it had a transition process till it went into full effect in 1995. The United States government in 1992, 1993, 1994 created, they basically set aside 40% of the visas they gave, which were 40,000 a year, for Irish immigrants. They basically said they were reserving 40% of those 120,000 visas for the country who had the most number of applications and winners of the TP5. So you can imagine, in 3 years, Irish immigrants got 48,000 visas. So it sorted out their community in a sense, and that's what now brought the DV into being. And now the DV has morphed in an unintended way to be a driver, one of the main drivers of African migration to the United States. Because the way they formulated it was, since Asia and Latin America were predominating those immigrant streams, they would get just a tiny percentage of the visas through the DV. And so they opened it out to Europe and Africa. So now what we have is about 35 to 40% of the 50,000 visas are won by Africans, let's say 30 to 40%. And about 30% of the visas are won by Europeans, but Europeans from countries of the old Soviet Union. So now you think about those who are winning the top recipients or the top recipient countries of the DV are Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Belarus. I was talking to a friend of mine, she was like, that's Central Asia. I said, well, the US classifies them as Europeans. So that's, she was like, they're Central Asia. I was like, yeah, well, they're Europe. And so that's, so that's really the whole history of the DV, where you hear, President Trump at the point in time, he was saying, why do we have all these individuals from Haiti and shithole countries? We want people from Scandinavia and Norway to apply, and they don't apply. Because, when we think about who wants to migrate, if you can get a good quality of life, have jobs in your home country, the pressures to push you out are in there, right? But that's sort of the history that it started as a policy to bring in white Europeans. It still is bringing Europeans of the different countries, and it's bringing in Africans, and that's just the history of the DV. And I became interested. I think your question was, why did I want to study it? I became interested in studying it because I think one of the things, as an immigrant coming from Nigeria, is that I see immigration policies coming from the global north that are sort of intruding or that are basically acting upon these countries and their citizens that are sovereign nations, right? When you begin to see the way they are shaping our social organization, the way they are shaping our communities, the way they are impacting individuals, even before they arrive in whatever destination country they are seeking to go to. And that was what made me really interested in the DV, because it's an annual, a huge event during the registration period in so many countries. You see in Ghana, you see the tents. In Ghana, it's one of the top applicant setting countries. Over 6% of the Ghanaian population applied for the DV. That was to let you know the scale of this program in some countries. And so that was what I was like, what's the impact, right? And how is it that these policies are impacting before the people even come to the United States? And that and it's not just the US. It's not the US only. We have to think about other developed advanced countries and their policies. Canada and its point system, England and its talented system now, countries coming out of the Gulf. And that was sort of what made me interested in talking about, writing a book about the DV.
Well, it's a fantastic book, and what makes it fantastic is not only the subject matter that you're tackling, but how you do it. The title of the book is Structured Like Downstream Effects of the U.S. Diversity Visa Program. And I think it captures how you use this very broad lens to capture not just the unanticipated effects of the program, it's redesigned by the people who use it in a way, but it's long-term reverberations. And I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the title of the book and why you chose this particular method.
Right. Normally I'm really bad at titles, but I think I stumbled on a good one. And when I was talking, we were like, structured law, that's oxymoronic. I was like, yeah, I guess so, to put structured and law together. Because when we think about who is lucky, right, it's someone who gets something, your chances of winning it are very small, and then outside of your own abilities, outside of your control. And so to win the lottery, I think why I chose that title was, there's this aura of good fortune around winning the DV. If you pick to 1 out of 12 million, 20 million, your chances, the probability of your winning is 0.0067%. It's small. And that's just to win it. Now to go through the process and get one of the 50,000 visas, you're having that probability. But then, when I talk to people, they're like, I screamed when I won, and I saw I was chosen, I rolled on the floor, my parents, thank God, it's a salvation for the entire family, so there's that whole language of luck and fortune, good fortune. And I started to talk to people, and I realized there are two sides of the winning coin. If you flip a coin out, right, you have heads and tails. And I began to realize there are positive aspects of winning the DV. It's a family win, this whole joy people feel. But there are negative aspects. And that's what's made me begin to say, all right, that even though it's portrayed as, oh, you're lucky to win it, the entire process of the DV program is completely structured. And by that I'm saying it's structured in terms of who gets to hear about it, who gets to play it, the administration and bureaucracy of the program itself, the whole process, and make people go through, and also in terms of the practices of these visa entrepreneurs, and to give you an example of what I mean. One of the main ways in which it's structured is that because of its educational requirement, not everybody can pay, can register and read with the. So walking on the streets of Nigeria in Accra, going to the markets, looking at people, I was like, you know what? A huge chunk of these individuals can't use this as a pathway because the program has structured and divided the population into two, the worthy and the unworthy, where the worthy are those who are educated, and the worthy are the ones who are not educated, and the U.S. wants nothing to do with them at all. So that's one of the main things that drove me to talk about structured law. Structure, just the slides and the elites of these populations are the ones who can play it. And then in terms of, what you talked about, let me go back to you about the unintended, did you talk about the unintended consequences of it? One of the, that was, I touched upon it, are these visa entrepreneurs that have emerged to monetize the program. And one of the unintended consequences of the impact of it is because of the educational requirements, they are targeting individuals in the final year of their secondary school or in college because they meet the educational requirements. And they tell them, play the lottery. You never know, try the luck, make the luck. And what then happens is for those who win or who are selected in the lottery, it really depends on the year of your schooling when you win it. If you win it in your third and fourth year, the likelihood is that you would finish your degree program and you can move to the United States as a graduate. But if you win it in your first or second years, you're most likely going to have your visa in hand if you're successful in your third year or in your final year, or even. And then the question arises, what do you do? For those who are going through economic hardships, which is the majority of many of these individuals, they can't afford multiple tickets to keep the green card going. Because US law requires you, if you have a green card, you can't be outside of the United States longer than 180 days. If you're outside for longer than 180 days, your green card lapses. They can't afford 4 tickets over 2 years to direct, so they all are leaving. And so they're having this group of individuals who are leaving before they finish. And it's painful for them. These are some of the reverberations we're talking about. Because they were on track to becoming elites in their country. For these individuals, university sports are highly competitive. There are very few sports with the number of young people in many of these countries. Let's talk about countries south of the Sahara. So by the time you're in university, you're good. You've shown that you're good. And if you had stayed, you're on your path to the middle class. But then they come, and then they struggle. Because as far as the United States is concerned, they're high school graduates, not just a high school diploma. On one hand, they have psychological trauma, because they look at their peers, who they left, who have finished. Some of these peers have turned around and come to the United States to do master's programs, and they are still struggling with community college prerequisites. They want to do nursing. It's taking them a long time because they have to pay bills that they don't have enough money for tutors. They have to take few courses in semester. I had individuals like one of my respondents, Brianna. She was the very first wave. She won it in 95. And at the time I spoke to her, it took her 12 years to get a college degree. And she left in her third year of a degree program from the University of Ibadan of Nigeria. And so she had gone the pathway of home health aides, you come in, part of the reverberations, so some of them, you're told nursing is the way to go. You might not like nursing, so so just thinking in terms of the interruption of human capital, I think it's one of the long-lasting reverberations, I would say.
So it's very interesting because in thinking about these reverberations, you say that winning is only the beginning of the DV journey, right? It's, you take us through these many reverberations and the lives of your interlocutors. And these lives that you introduce us to are presented in a hugely compelling and very empathetic way. And I want to ask about them, but before I get to them, I want to ask about something else that the book does that I think is really smart and nuanced, which is that you, even though you tell us that the journey starts when you win, actually what you show us is that the journey starts far before, and it starts in Accra, it starts in Lagos, and it continues far after, and it starts and continues for the people who never leave. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that and what it might mean for countries who other countries that participate in the DV program, countries other than Ghana and Nigeria, for example. How generalizable do you think that these effects are?
I think they're generalizable because one of the things that I'm seeing is, and it's one of the arguments I make in my book, that all these rich countries, these economically advantaged countries in the global north and even outside of the global north, have to begin to pay attention to the intended and unintended consequences of their immigration policy. And this is not unique to the US at all. It's unique to any country that is able to extract or move people as a result of their migration policies. And I'm saying we have to get it out. We can't just think to ourselves, oh, they're coming, people just numbers and statistics, and they're here in our country, and okay, maybe we're tired of them now, maybe we're trying to stop the program. But we have to really think about, well, how did you affect the people even before they arrive? What's the transnational impact of your migration policy? And how can we begin to think about making policies that are win-win for everybody and not just for the host country? And I think that's a question that is not unique to the United States at all. Now, when we think about the DV journey just beginning, moving aside from the steps they have to take with the DV, I think one of the areas is the migration industry actors that are emerging to monetize this program. The reverberation in terms of Ghana, Accra, any other certain country, is these visa entrepreneurs that I found. They are different levels. You have those who are just individuals, one person, one-man company or one-man outfits that move to these different colleges, set up a table and say, come apply. There are some that are agencies, travel agencies that have added this arm of another, a side of their business, an aspect of their business to have all these street tents. So they have street tents they erect on the streets of these countries that are almost serving as, it's like a convenience now to play the DV. You're going to work, you're coming back, you see, oh, play the DV, live, work, school legally in the United States. You're like, wow, okay, let me just try my luck, right? And you just go in and you pay your fee, equivalent of $3 or $4 US, and they do it for you. So one of the things you're seeing is that they're spreading the message of this immigration policy to thousands of people that would not otherwise have heard, right? And they're telling them, so they're actually meeting an indifference threshold. Many individuals had no intention of traveling. They weren't thinking of it. I had so many respondents in my sample who were like, we were just walking on the street in our campus. Just think about this square. And they're just like, oh, let me go get a meal. And you're walking with a friend, and then there's someone with a table. And I said, hey, come play the DV. And you're like, I don't want to play the DV. Like, you don't have to pay any money. I'll take your picture. Just fill the form. And they're like, sure, why not? And then you have individuals who were doing in exam halls, writing their WAEC exams, which is like the SAT, but it's the O levels. And someone comes into the room and says, hey, all of you most likely will have passport pictures because this is the exam period. Here's a form, fill out the form, but many of them forgot about it. But one of the things, I talked to some of the owners of these agencies. I talked to two of the owners of the largest agencies in Accra who have the street tents and who go into schools. And one of the things they do is that they get all the numbers possible. They get with your own phone number. They ask you what's your mother's phone number, what's your father's phone number, what are your cousin's phone number, what's your pastor's phone number. They basically try to just encircle the individual with numbers to be able to contact the person in case they win. And so I had one respondent told me she forgot. She played it, she graduated, she traveled, she moved for work. She moved 700 kilometers away from Cape Cod to Accra. Another one from Calabar, which is in the Niger Delta, all the way to Lagos, very far. And then one of them, her mother called her and said, I've been getting phone calls from these agents. Did you play anything? Did you do it? I was like, okay, yeah. I didn't pay any mind. I didn't care. They said play, I played. They said give me passport photograph. I gave them the passport photograph and that movie, right? Another one told me they couldn't find her. She had moved. The agent went to her brother's place of work. They said the brother had lost the job. He had moved. They started asking people around the market, do you know that? Okay, there's this cousin, that guy, I think that is his cousin there, and the cousin was like, yeah. They now called her and said, did you play the DV? I had one respondent that was surprising. He had enrolled into university, he had gotten admission into University of Ghana and Legon. And he said people were calling him that he won the DV and he wasn't interested. He was like, I don't want to go, I'm reading chemistry here, I'm fine. They went to his home and sat down with his parents and told his parents, your son is about to lose a marvelous opportunity. You have to convince him to continue with the application process. And so these visa entrepreneurs, this is how they're shaping migration. But then another thing where they're talking about the reverberations that are felt even by the people who don't move is for some, even if they tell you play for free, if you're chosen, the bill comes due. Then they now tell you $3,000 to help you process it, $6,000. Where are people to find the money? They have to go to family members, parents have to raise loans. Some of them had to go to their churches to say, I'm one of your members, this is an opportunity, please, I need help. Church members had to raise the money. You know, I talked to one of the visa entrepreneurs, the owners. I said, you know, what do you say about this business model? And he was like, we're not a philanthropic institution. It's not, that you have to pay. So they tell them, go to your community elders, go to your chief, go figure out how you can do it. And so some of them become entangled in debt, which impedes them as they're coming here to the United States, or their family members have to pick up the responsibility. Yeah.
You're telling us these really fascinating and rich stories about the process. What your book does so beautifully and so powerfully is to tell us the stories, the lived life stories of the people who come, and how there are ups and downs and twists and turns and things that are not expected. And your ethnographic method is so nuanced and so sensitive and really empathetic. You really get a sense of the people that you bring into the conversation with you. I was wondering if you would share with us some of the stories that you found have stayed with you, even now that the book is done. Stories that you really feel capture the complex life histories that grow out of the participation in the DV program.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first thing that surprised me, and then I'll talk about specific particular individuals in the study. But the thing that really surprised me and got me so passionate about the work was that I expected to hear joyous stories. It's you won the DV, yay, it's great. I really expected that I would hear stories of success and happiness and joy. But I wasn't hearing those stories consistently, and that really surprised me, because I had a question about what made you apply for the DV and what dreams did you have upon playing the DV, what do you think your life would be like? And that was, I wasn't really hearing, wanting to hear the stories. And so in one breath, on one hand, on one side, I would say, for many, the DV is a tool of mobility. Let me be clear about that. It is a program that should be lauded, but tweaked, because I think it can be made better. And so immigrants were a lot of the DV migrants I spoke to were really emotionally attached to the United States. Really had this sense of gratitude only in America. Our people like Carrie Goodman said this DV is a way to act for the US to acquire soft power, right? Because you're telling the world we are wonderful. In this era of immigration restriction, this policy is welcoming. It's not seeking to bar people, it's not seeking to deter people, but it's saying, hey, as long as you're educated, you can come in and you go through the checks. But then I started coding my interviews and talking to individuals, and I started hearing stories of disruption. They were going through disruption in different ways. Disruption in the education, as I've spoken about, this disrupted undergrads that are moving out before they finish. I was hearing stories, disruption around marriage, for example. So some of the stories one of the stories that turned to my heart, it's rare, and I had read about it in a New York Times piece. I was surprised to see it in my sample, where, there was a piece in the New York Times many years ago about how the US requiring DNA evidence for individuals who are filing for their children because they want to ensure that they are biological children. And so they were talking about how it's causing some troubles because some surprises are coming. And I had a respondent in my sample who had moved. He won the DV, he came to the United States, he wanted to file now for his wife and his 2 boys. The disruption that touches the heart for many is that when they win and they're married, they don't have enough money for themselves to buy tickets for they're the primary winner and then the spouse and the children. So they always some of them say, I'll go first, and then you will come later. But because the DV program doesn't have a rollover, if you don't use the visas of your family within that fiscal year, they're lost. And then you now have to wait till you become a citizen. It's normally faster to apply for your family when you're a citizen than to apply for them when you're still a green card holder. And so that puts 5 years. Then you have to find the money. So some of them are reuniting after 7, 8, 9 years. So he was in that situation, which is a story that touches the heart anyway, about creating transnational families. And he now filed, and they asked for DNA evidence for his 2 boys. And it turned out that the oldest wasn't his son when the results came out. And that ended up in a divorce. So these are stories that stay with you, thinking about, wow, family instability, marriage instability links to winning the DV. You also have positive stories like Shome. She sort of was doing nursing in Ghana, then she won, and now she's a medical doctor doing excellently well. I followed up with her a few years ago, and she has this massive house in Texas. She was, it's like $500 million. She was able to bring her family, her mom and her siblings. She's able to support the brother back home. So a nice story of mobility, and she does say only in America, only this DB program would have allowed her to do it. So there were some of those, that stayed with me and in the positive side, and then the ones really talking about the struggles and the sub-optimization of these immigrants' potential. I think that's some of the stories that came out of the study.
So I want to ask you a question that maybe is a little bit unfair. But so you presented to us, even in this conversation, the unexpected consequences of this policy from its origins through to today. You've shown us how it's transformed all of the places it touches. You've shown us how it has transformed the lives of the participants, those who win and those who don't win. And so now I want us to just take a moment and imagine that we had 3 choices for president, and that you were elected, and that in the possibility of you shaping immigration policy as the executive, would you keep the DV program? If so, would you expand it? Would you change it? How would you amend the policy with all of your knowledge about these unanticipated effects?
Great question. I will keep it. I definitely am for the program. I would say that there's a lot of misinformation about this program. When you hear people like President Trump, ex-President Trump, then talking about the program, they like to say, it's a lottery, you're not getting the best people, it's a terrible program. It basically uses it in the context of abuse, talking about the U.S. not being smart in its immigration policy. But I'm here to say that you should call the DV program what it really needs, a highly skilled migrant program. We have to be amazed by the fact that a program that is purportedly a lottery, where if you think in terms of random design, everybody should have an equal opportunity of winning, of getting into this program. But that's not what's happening in actuality, which is why you can see it's extremely structured in how it actually filters people into the program. So looking at the data from 50% of those from all regions coming in with the DB program have at least a bachelor's degree. When you just using the new immigrant survey, which I picked up, and I looked at it 2 ways, and I actually restricted data so that I could divide these winners by country. 62% of Africans coming in through the DB have at least a bachelor's degree. This is compared to a US national average of 39%. But when you even think about the national average of the countries they're coming from, it's unbelievable. Nigeria stands as one of the most educated African countries in Africa. Let's not talk about Nigerians in the US. We are one of the most educated immigrant groups in the US. But in Nigeria, only 7% of the population over the age of 25 have at least a bachelor's degree. Just 7%. Coming to the US, 61% have at least a bachelor's. So this is not a normal distribution at all. And the 7% of Nigerians having at least a bachelor's is the highest in West Africa. So by the time you have 62% of Africans coming through the DV having at least a bachelor's, that's just to tell you how elite and highly skilled these individuals are. So I will keep the program. I think one of the benefits of it is also that it allows independent migrants, what the US calls independent migrants, to come to the US. Those are individuals who would not have any other way. They don't have family who can file for them. They are not in the line of work that their employer can sponsor a visa. So it gives these individuals a chance to come to the US. I think I will expand the program. Only the Biden administration's immigration legislation has called for an expansion in the program to 80,000 visas a year. Others have been saying, let's make it 25,000. It's been losing support of Capitol Hill, largely because the conservative politicians don't like the ethnic makeup or the racial makeup of people coming in during programs now. It's a good program to keep. And the reason why I'm saying so is that if the United States says it wants skilled migrants, it's giving you skilled migrants. Yeah. Another thing I would do is create a college exemption. I think that's a simple fix that will help to prevent this human capital obstruction that is happening on the corruption that's happening. If people can give proof that they're enrolled in university programs, They should be allowed to go through the process and get the visa, let it count to the 50,000 visa cap of their year, and be allowed to be fair and stay and finish their degree program before they come. It's win-win. These individuals will send more remittances. They won't have the psychological trauma. They can come in at a much higher point in the U.S. labor market. And the U.S. gets more highly skilled migrants. What I will also say is that the experiences of the DV migrants is a cautionary tale. Because I didn't talk about it here, but when you look at the national data using the New Immigrant Survey, they do the least well. We did the first 2 years of arriving in the United States than refugees, which was surprising. Family-sponsored migrants and employer-sponsored. The employer-sponsored is expected they will do well because they have jobs. And so it shows that they need support. All immigrants in the United States need support. They are the only ones without support. Family help their family. Employer-sponsored have jobs and salaries and resources of their companies. Refugees and asylees have got mental health and also healthy health. But immigrants, DV immigrants, because of this whole language of lottery, it's a win, it's a prize, it's a jackpot. It's like the only thing we're giving you is the golden ticket or the prize is the immigrant visa, and we'll figure it out. So that's where I would say that we have to spend more time thinking about not just that we want more skilled migrants, but what's the social support networks these migrants have as they're coming into the United States, because that's extremely important.